All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Chelmsford Conservation Commission meeting for Tuesday, August 8th. My name is Carl Bischoff. I'm the chair of the Conservation Commission. Welcome to the meeting, and we are being recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia, so be aware of that. And we will start our meeting with a couple of items on citizen concerns. Christine, do you want to start with, I think you're first on the list? Sure.
Good evening. And I guess, just, David, you have some of the information that I had provided. So I just want to give a little bit of back history. This is an existing drainage easement located between Hugo Lane and Sands Place. And so we have an existing drainage easement from 1961 that does take drainage from parts of Hugo Lane, Sands Place, and actually also Bishop as well. In terms of, so this was installed in 1961. It is largely corrugated metal pipe installed in the 60s. A lot of that corrugated metal pipe we're finding has been rotted through and right around now. So going back to last spring, there was...
So,
Hey, Dale, go on mute.
well, I read it. I didn't quite understand it.
No, Dale, not yet.
Sorry. Going back to last spring, there was a reported sinkhole in the back of 3 Hugo Lane. That's where the 15-inch drain was going through their backyard. Stormwater investigated it, found that that sinkhole was part of a failure.
That's one of the ways. you
Tried
talk
to
about
make a
doing it.
repair at that time.
Hold on one second,
sorry.
Christine. Dale Williams, you need to go on mute.
I'll go and ask.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'll continue. So yeah, a repair was made last April of 2022 by DPW, a small repair, just trying to restabilize that pipe. I think it was more on the top of the
okay.
pipe.
All
That
right,
I'll just wait for the. Sorry.
They take over everything.
Thank you very much for that.
I thought we could mute people.
I thought he could mute.
I
Chelmsford
think you
Telemedia,
can.
you mute?
Or
I think that's where David went.
he went to talk to Chelmsford Telemedia. I think I think you're able to.
I think you can.
Maybe you say mute all. Maybe.
Usually David, I thought David could.
Okay.
They also had farmers, so maybe they took it away from them.
Okay, we're good. He's muted. He's
All right.
talking and I don't hear him.
All right, thank you. So this
right,
this started last April. A repair was made in that 15-inch corrugated metal pipe. That repair did not last. Again, in November, that collapse basically reappeared. At that time, Stormwater looked a little further into it. Move forward to this past spring, they looked in that they realized they had to replace a whole section of pipe, about 170 linear feet that goes in the backyards of. And actually, I think David, if you could maybe just switch to this next slide that shows the aerial, that'd be helpful. So here, what you're seeing is so these are 2 catch basins up here that come down to a 12-inch RCP. The back of 3 Hugo Lane. The failure was right around here. The initial failure happened again. This was the pipe that had to be replaced. This is 3 Hugo Lane, 1 Hugo Lane, 10 State Street. Drainage easement is all through here, access through Sands Place. So that repair was made actually this May. It was not coordinated, I will say, with myself or engineering, but it was made. So there was a little lack of coordination on that part. And there was also, I think, at that time, just some coordination with adjacent homeowners that had some concerns about how the area was left. We are experiencing a very wet season, 10 inches of rain in June, 15 inches in July. So also just being out in that area, because it will say, so this area, even though there's a drainage easement, this picture shows the location of the wetlands in the wetland buffer. So it is a very wet area. It's directly in the wetlands. the area that was left, I guess, was very mucky, wet, and some of the abutters had said that was wetter than normal. So at that time, going to this past July, there was stone, 3 and 5 inch stone, and some fill placed in to try to stabilize that area, just to try to restore it. And the plan was then to revegetate that area. At that time, that is when I started getting some emails, just inquiries from some adjacent property owners asking the status of the project. Since then, I've brought in, we have a new stormwater superintendent, him, engineering, and so and also our conservation agent. So wanted to coordinate closely with conservation to make sure that we do the right thing to address this. So we do have some fill in the area that I think that does need to be taken out. I've reviewed the site. I don't know, David, if you have, yeah, so this is a picture looking at the backyards of 1 Hugo Lane and 10 State Street. As the fill and the stone was placed, I would say it stabilized the wet area, but in doing that, it also potentially changed how some of the flow was naturally occurring. So what we're proposing is to come in and remove this fill. We do want to restore it to the original contours. We have contours from all the aerial flyovers we do. So taking the 2021 contours, coordinating with the wetland specialists to do wetland flagging, and also using our engineering department to do a current conditions survey of this work, so we'll know what that delta is that needs to be removed. Revegetate that area. That should allow the area to really be restored to what it was prior to us adding any fill. So I would call that what we initially want to do, and we could do that as early within the next month, weather pending, because we are receiving a lot of rain. And then also, I think, so the pipe that was installed was a 10-inch ADS pipe, and there originally was a 15-inch pipe that was not coordinated, unfortunately, with engineering. But we want to make sure that we look to have the right size put in. There's two upstream. There are 2 catch basins that are 12-inch, so I would say we at least want a 12-inch. It was 15. But I also, before just going in and ripping out the 10-inch pipe, I want to do it right, obviously through an NOI process, but look at the overall area. Because just downstream of this, there's an 18-inch corrugated metal pipe. So I do not know if that was also verified, if conditioned, so I want to look at that. I just want to look at the whole watershed too, and I've reviewed this with David Kuntz, just to see if there's any adjustments that need to be made. And then we would come back at a later date with that NOI, recommending at least that section of that 10-inch be replaced with 15, but potentially other, I don't want to speak what other changes, but we'll look at the whole area. And propose to do this in-house with in-house staff. And so, yeah, I don't know if there's any questions. I have communicated with the abutters about, especially since I've been brought into the project and a new stormwater superintendent. And so we're just keeping them abreast of the situation and just making sure that if they have any concerns, as you can see in that previous picture, we did add erosion control, some hay bales, just to prevent any runoff going onto their properties.
David, do you want to add anything before we go to questions?
No, I think Christine covered it pretty well. But just want to clarify that the action that the commission is being asked to take tonight is to essentially approve the removal of the fill. So that it would be through an enforcement order. The other components would be to get the wetlands delineated, and I have suggested the name of a consultant that can do that and determine the extent of fill. So remove the fill, return it to original grades, and then probably just use a wetland seed mix. Pending, again, the filing of a notice of intent probably next year to put in the right size pipe and whatever additional work is determined needs to be done.
Okay. So do we have any questions from the commission? John, do you have anything?
No, I'd say they have a handle on it.
Okay.
Got to remove the fill and do the job.
Peter?
Yeah, no, I'm good, thank you.
Bill?
Oh, I'm fine.
Dave?
So you're recreating a wetlands?
We're recreating we're trying to restore what was there.
Is there an outflow or inflow to that wetland area, or is it isolated?
So actually, no, there, if you go, if I can just explain.
Because on my GIS map, it looks isolated.
So, right, so we actually just, we took our GPS equipment and did update the infrastructure. I think on what you can see might be a little different from what you're seeing here.
It sure
This
is.
is a manhole right here that I believe is not on GIS. The two catch basins come through here. Bishop Street, Sands Place, all come down here. This is being the low point, and the pipe actually goes out through here. There is one catch basin that we could not locate, so that's part of the additional investigations. So it goes through. So there's no outlet to here. There are outfalls.
Are you proposing a new outlet?
As of right now, no. So
Okay, because if you don't, won't it just accumulate more?
so everything is actually feeding through. Everything's piped. So it is kind of a unique situation. Usually
It's
we don't
all
have
piped to the wetlands,
through the wetlands.
through to
So
State
all
Street?
these, all
To
these,
State Street?
To State Street.
Okay,
So
good.
that's existing.
Yeah,
We
okay.
typically we.
And
pipe-
what you're trying to do is to make it, size it properly to handle the volume
Correct,
that's gonna go
correct.
through there.
Yes.
Yep, gotcha.
and really just restore what was there.
Yeah, I mean, there are 3 catch basins that are on the surface. We think, well, I guess one of them still hasn't been found. This one, and this one up here. So,
That's an old neighborhood.
right,
Yes,
goes back to 61.
is when it-
So obviously, the grades have to be correct in order for those catch basins to function as intended and remove the surface water.
Over the years, we've had a lot of issues in that general neighborhood between Mill Road, Freeman, Dominic. And it's not just there, it's in a number of different places, and you guys have had to, over the years, had to do a lot of work, so hope, this may not be the end of it, but
Right, so we want to look at the whole, I guess, watershed of this part. I know, as you can see just off the screen, there's this other area that has a bunch of outlets. It's not proposed just as this scope, but as we're in this area, it's something that we
Yep.
thought we would look at.
Okay, Mark, anything?
No.
Chris?
I mean, I think it's a good plan for now, kind of ratify the enforcement order, deal with what we got, and then I'm looking forward to seeing the NOI come in to really properly size everything and, do the full assessment, so.
and to see some dry weather.
So,
See some
yes,
dry-
dry weather would be
Would be
good.
great.
Not too much of a drought. We don't want a drought, but we want drier weather than we've been experiencing.
So do we need a motion then for a
Yes.
ratification of the order? I'll take a motion.
So move.
Second.
All right, motion from Dave, second from Chris. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. So it's passed, motion passed. Thank you very much.
Could I ask,
Um,
could I ask Christine a question?
Yeah, sure.
Not with the application tonight, Christine, but you've been here a year and a half, maybe, year?
About since last April. Yep.
Based on the wet summer we've had last year and now this year,
Well, last year was a drought,
yeah.
but yeah, this summer,
you
yes.
care to evaluate our stormwater management system in town, or is it too early?
We
I won't hold you to it.
I don't want to give too. So we do have I would say I'm new. We also have a new engineering team. So we're really looking at everything. Now we have a new stormwater superintendent. We are, I would say, reevaluating everything, but there's a lot. I think what we're finding is sometimes, so this is an example where we didn't have a manhole located, so we weren't sure of connectivity. So that's something that in terms of a goal of ours is to make sure that what's out there is accurately reflected in our GIS. So that's something as we refine the GIS, I think that will better show what we have and then what we need to do. We are in the rain events that we have been experiencing. We've been seeing, we've been seeing areas pop up as, Anti Road is one. Yancey Road, Chelmsford Street, like the same areas are flooding, so we know where those problem areas are. So I think trying to address those. But I think I would say we're still in the assessment stage. We have 325 culverts. There's a lot of needs, and so I think that's something we just have to further kind of build out from what we already have.
So in the vein of the wet area, would you like to just give us a quick overview of our event on Thursday morning up in North Chelmsford?
Sure.
It's quite
I
an event.
have actually, I've never seen anything like this. So DPW received a call around 6:30. People started calling DPW frantically around 6:30, 6:45 on Thursday morning. saying that they were experiencing an increase in water levels, mostly in the Dunshire area, Scotty Hollow, Dunstable, Tingsboro. And also there was reports of odors. So first thing was, is it a sewer break? We weren't sure what it was. We were trying to find the source. We were able to find the source in an area just under Route 3 behind Wardway and Doors Drive it is. There's a large culvert, a Mass DOT culvert that goes right under Route 3, connecting on the other side to Scotty Hollow, Dunshire. What happened was, and that culvert is, I don't want to, it's like 6 to 8 feet. It's a large culvert. What had happened is there was a beaver damming in that culvert that was causing a blockage upstream in that area, and I think also maybe potentially some increase in water levels downstream. So what we come to find out is that we think that gave. We have no evidence of anyone being out there. There was no, Mass DOT wasn't out there. The only access point was from Route 3. We actually went over after and didn't see any evidence of people walking. There was no tools, no trucks, no evidence of people. So we think it actually is just something that gave. It was such a large, large area that gave, and that's just probably just as a force that went down that pipe and went through some different areas. We've coordinated with Mass DOT since it was a very large area behind the beaver dam that was that had been blocked, and so just quick estimates, not true numbers, but it was millions of gallons of water that basically just receded within a couple of hours. We don't have video. I wish we had video of it, but it was almost.
Isn't that an area where 3 years ago Mass Highway did a lot of work on going under Route 3?
They did do some work up
Yeah.
in that area. So there is a culvert, but it was beaver. Basically, it was a beaver dam. So it probably was a wall of water that just went through, carved away through parts of North Chelmsford. So there have been some claims that's coordinated with Mass DOT. I don't know, the Lowell Sportsman Club had some impact. But it was really just, the amount of water, we're talking potentially 7-10 million gallons of water that just went into an area. We were out today at a conservation area. The bridge over at Swain Road was completely flooded, probably by
Did we lose the
10,
Did we lose the bridge?
No, we do have some work to do, but I think it seems to be intact, but there's definitely some
Already built a good
erosion.
bridge.
The bridge is solid. It's a little bit askew slightly, so.
By a couple
we
inches, yeah.
talked about what Christine and her crew can do to help to get it back on, square.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep. So it was really unique. Beaver. We do have a lot of beaver damming happening around town, but I've never seen something like that where it gives in that amount of water released. And I guess we're fortunate there's not more significant flooding or no one was injured. So.
I think other than the adjacent people, nobody knew about it.
It was a quiet event, I
Yeah.
think.
We don't have any public news anymore.
Well, yeah, it didn't hit, Chelmsford News on Facebook or anything like that. It was kind of surprising because it was pretty significant. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Christine.
next on the agenda, we have 35 Brick Hill Road, an update on the enforcement order and the RDA. David, do you want to start us off and get us?
Sure, so maybe you could come up to the podium, Catherine. So, as you know, I've been working with the Ramoses to fulfill the requirements of the enforcement order. One of them, one of the revisions that the commission made to the enforcement order I drafted was to restore the entire 100-foot buffer zone on the property. Catherine's here tonight to ask if they can just restore the wetlands in the first 25 feet. So.
Okay. And can you please give us your name and your address, and you can give your update?
My name's Catherine Ramos, and I am from 35 Brick Hill Road. And we wanted to ask if there was a possibility that we could restore the 25-foot buffer zone, and then after that, be able to create a lawn and keep the retaining wall that's there. We were trying to work with a wetland specialist. Her name, Maureen, but she's on vacation until the 14th, so until then, I wouldn't be able to grab an exact plan. But I do have the plan here that shows the 25-foot and then where the retaining wall would be, which is at about 85 feet. We measured it. So just wanted to see if that's possible. And then the RDA that we want to fill out.
Have you seen it yet, David?
I have seen it. I was hoping to get out there today. I wasn't able to, but the last time I was out there, which was a few weeks ago, they had made a huge amount of progress in getting the buffer zone cleaned up, getting the trash, the artificial trash stuff out of the wetlands. That was almost completed. Have you made more progress?
Yes.
Since then? So they
Good, good.
they had definitely been going in the right direction. The reason I think it's a reasonable
Excuse me,
request.
Dave, do you have a map of the site by any chance?
No, I don't. I can.
No, just go ahead. I thought you might have it handy, that's all.
Yeah, no, Catherine has the plan, the wetland plan. But the reason I think it's a reasonable request, what she's asking for, I mean, I can, there are a number of examples where in a not too dissimilar situation, the commission allowed the violator and the applicant to create lawn to up to or pretty close to the 25-foot no disturb. There have been other examples with notice of intent filings or the same thing. The commission has allowed creation of lawn up to the 25-foot no disturb. So I think it's a reasonable request, and at the very least it's consistent. I think, to be fair,
So what's the request again, specifically?
to restore the wetlands,
Yep.
because there was a little bit of encroachment of the wetlands, and the first 25 feet.
If this GIS shows wetlands cutting the property almost in half, but it looks like you can go to the back of the property. So are we talking about the wetland line from the back of the
No,
property?
no,
Okay, that's
no.
what
Just-
So we're just talking about the wetland line from the side of the property, kind of
Right.
formally
Right.
cutting the
Yes.
lot in half.
Yes,
And so
yes.
the homeowner activity would be on the Brick Kiln Road side of that. Good, okay, I understand.
Right. And then, again, it's required by the enforcement order to file an RDA, which I think should be pretty well completed. And they have hired Norse Engineering to do the restoration plan, which will also be presented, once that's completed. I certainly, I think the restoration plan for the first 25 feet should certainly include
They're
plantings
talking about
of trees.
this.
I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was previously wooded, so,
And so there's a retaining wall there now.
yes.
And it's a good-sized retaining wall, right?
It is, yeah. I think to remove that retaining wall would just
Yeah.
cause an awful lot of damage. And it's no closer than 85 feet to
Yeah,
the
okay,
wetland.
okay.
And was that wall existing?
No,
No, we did that wall about a year ago.
So that would be included in the
that'll be included in the RDA
RDA?
filing,
Okay,
yes.
okay. All right, so questions, any other questions, John, anything else?
I'm good.
Peter?
The grassy area that you would like to do, is it a little bit confused? I just looked at that quickly, I didn't see it, because I was going too quick, but is that grassy area, is it 85 feet within what we call the 100-foot buffer? Or is it only 15 feet?
It'll go up to 25 feet from the wetlands, which
Okay.
is allowed under the bylaw, 25-foot no disturb
Yep.
setback.
Okay, got it.
Bill, anything?
Not right now.
Dave, anything else?
You operate a business from this site. Will this proposal affect your business at all?
No. We talked about that recently with building management. Yes.
Building inspector.
Building inspector. I'm sorry. So they came in recently because they had complaints from neighbors that we were running a business and all of that, which we do have the permit for. But 90% of the time, 95% of the time, actually, most of the material is not there because our workers are out and they're with them, or they take the cars and all of that. And we only have 2 cars and 2 trailers, and they don't stay at the house most of the time, so it won't affect at all.
I've asked the building inspector if there are any outstanding issues in his department. He said no.
No, I think the proposal's a good one, and I'd like to see that it doesn't affect their business if possible.
It would.
Okay, Mark, do you have anything?
What's, is topo, I don't, when they put the 25-foot buffer, does everything go down to here, or is everything?
It's really pretty flat.
Okay.
It's, you know,
Typically, we want to see some kind of delineation. Do we want to do that? Are we good with the
well,
grass?
the delineation's been done, and it's shown on the plan. You mean the delineation on site with the staking the 25-foot notice strip?
yeah.
Yeah, we can, that can certainly be put in as a condition in the determination. I've asked them to do that already,
Okay.
but they've still been in the process of cleaning up the area.
There's no stamp on this, but all these numbers are true. Right?
Yes, yeah, and I've been out there plenty of times. So.
Chris, do you have anything?
Yeah, I'm satisfied with the progress to date. This is good, and I'd be fine with making that
That's
change
a
in
lot.
scope
There's
and
the
having some,
contours.
grass vegetation covering up that other area. I'd be good with that.
So the request then, we don't have an RDA yet.
Not yet.
It's not a hearing,
Right.
so we're not like
So
doing
no,
public
no,
comment.
no formal vote is necessary.
Okay, it's
They
just an update essentially.
Yeah, they just
Okay.
wanted to get a sense from the commission whether
I think it's a
this
good
approach is
idea.
acceptable.
I think, yeah, my sense from what I'm hearing and seeing is that we're in accordance with this, and it's pleased with the progress that's happening, and appreciate the homeowner, property owner, working with us and getting caught up, and that's a good thing. So,
Yes.
anything else? We good?
Not on this.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
You can have your plan back, Catherine.
Oh, yeah, if you want it.
Yeah, don't want to make another one.
So, next, we get into our regulatory hearings. The first one, actually, the only regulatory hearing we have tonight is the 270 Billerica Road. We do have representatives from the applicant here. This is a continuation from our previous meeting. We had a number of open issues, so why don't we get started? And I see we have the attorney representing.
At least to start.
start, yeah.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, I got the material so late today, I
Yeah,
did not have
so-
a chance to read it.
So that's a good point. Let me preface this. I don't see us approving this tonight. I think that's off the table. That's just not going to happen. There's a lot to digest and a lot for us to review. It's good we're getting it, but we just got it today, some of us, and I'm not sure it's even complete. Is it?
Well, no, not in the sense that we've actually, from Ruth, Joel and Ruth, received some responses to the responses, so, the main thing I was thinking, that tonight's discussion would be limited to would be the focal point. I mean, there's a couple of issues I want to raise with respect to the immediate response action, but I think the main topic of discussion tonight should be the focal point.
Okay.
Okay. Just wanted to preface before Doug that I did meet with David this morning. We were kind of unclear whether we were going to appear or not. He just suggested it would be a good idea. We understand that the material came in late, but just to get a little more coordination done and kind of smooth things out, however questions we can answer. So
Yeah, I think that makes sense. That'll help us down the road.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good evening. For the record, Douglas DeShane, representing DH Properties Holdings, the controlling party of 270 Billerica Road. Recall at the last meeting, we were coming in for a simple, well, it seemed to be a simple modification, and then it came to light to all of us that there was in fact some contamination under the site, not caused by my clients, but from up gradient folks. So, there was a lot of discussion. The commission asked for a lot of information, background, understanding, and filings that I've never seen before, quite honestly. But I think the group did an amazing job in putting together tremendous amount of information, and we answered the questions and everything. But, I mean, it took us time to do that. It's going to take you time to review that.
Exactly.
And so we understood early on, and I know David was talking with Casey, that, we're not going to come in here tonight for a decision because there's just too much information. So I think we all agreed that it would be best for us to come in tonight and give you an overview of what we gave you so that, it's clear that we've satisfied everything that was required. And then also, I know David wanted some specific information about a particular part of what we submitted. So we felt, too, that rather than push it off and come in 2 weeks and, look at it then, we thought we'd come in for a quick visit. But I just want to tell you that from my client's perspective, you can imagine this has been quite traumatic. I mean, the delay to the project, the cost has been terrific. But we've all been given our marching orders to get this done, get the commission happy. So what I'm hoping tonight is to not only provide you whatever information you want to talk about, answer whatever questions you have, but personally I'd like to understand what of that additional information the commission may want to see peer reviewed. Because if we're going to, I think we're still waiting for some, peer review from earlier stuff. And here we are, don't even have that yet. So I'd like to get whatever new peer reviews we have to do, I'd like to get that on the table tonight so we can get it out there and get the peer reviews done so that when we do come back to you, hopefully we've wrapped this up. So that's my little legal spiel. Thank you for your time. Thank you for hearing. And now I'll turn it over to Casey Ferrara, who you know from Howard Stein Hudson, Ed Weigel from RU, our LSP, and a principal with RU, actually. So I'll turn it over to the technical guys. Thank you.
Good evening, Casey Ferrer with Howard Stein Hudson. I don't know that you guys want to dive into specifics of the responses before you've actually had a chance to review them, or I can just tell you pretty much what I changed in response to those responses.
Why don't you do that?
So I know a big point of concern for the focal point was it's being constructed within the level of the groundwater. What I've done is I met directly with Ferguson, who is what is a value-added retailer of the convergent product, and we've we've modified the profile of it. So we're maintaining the required depths, which would be the 18 inches of media with the 3 inches of mulch, but we've modified the bridging stone and the underdrain to bring it up so that it's no longer going to be constructed within the elevation of the groundwater. We've brought up the elevation of the groundwater was, I believe it was 115.08. We now have the bottom of construction, which would be the bottom of the underlying stone below the underdrain, is now going to be about 115.17. So about an inch of clearance between that. That's really as much as I could skinny up that system. I met with Ferguson. They've issued a letter, and that was part of the responses, but they've issued a letter that they concur with this approach, that the system as presented meets their requirements for the treatment removals that they have basically published based on tape testing, New Jersey DEP, New Jersey CAT, and that's kind of the gist of the change on the plan. Most of everything else was O&M changes that were basically brought on by the letter from Ms. Luna, and we concurred with everything that was said there. We added all to the O&M. So for outstanding items on civil, I believe we've issued a plan that should take care of everything.
Okay.
And I know that's got to be reviewed, but I just figured I'd throw it out there.
And I remember we were looking for a soil management plan. Was that in the package?
Yes. I thought we'd get to that after
Okay,
after we disposed of the focal point.
Sure. So like we said earlier, there was a lot of information that we gave you. It might even be more stuff than was asked for, but that we thought was relevant to the things that were asked for. It is a fairly large package, but I think most of the rest is going to be under Ed's scope. So unless there's any questions directly related to anything with the focal point, or if we want to hold questions till after,
Do we have a
whatever you
map
prefer.
of the site? Can you show me where the focal point
Uh,
is on the site?
We're still under the same presentation plan, really, David. So if you can pull up the previous one, I can show you.
I can bring that up. Let me see.
good at that, David.
Well, let's see if it works.
I take it there's just one focal point system on the site?
Correct, there's just one focal point system on the site.
So that's the same presentation plan
From last time, yep.
you said. So actually, I'll do the one. Okay.
I'm actually going to move you a little bit
Yeah.
left.
Those are the
So
focal point.
the focal point system sits just right in this green island within the parking lot. All of the sheet flow from the pavement is basically just directed to 3 different curb cuts within this island. Each curb cut is fitted with a pre-treatment device that is the Rain Guardian. After it exits the Rain Guardian, it goes right into the focal point. Same design as the last few meetings. I just revised the profile of that focal
And
point.
that unit is addressing only surface runoff from the
Correct,
from the
correct.
building and the
So-
streets?
So even
No
though
underground runoff?
Correct. So even though I have raised the profile of the focal point, we left in that impermeable liner that separates it for a couple reasons. One, because we're still within 2 feet of groundwater, so that's required, but also to protect it from any outside soils and any outside the groundwater that may be flowing through. So it's still completely sealed off, watertight from any underground water and from soils.
So, Casey, this came up a couple of hearings ago, and so you've already answered this, but a couple of people have asked me about this again. So, I think you mentioned that at the 100-year storm that the island where the focal point is located is underwater, or there's standing water there.
Yep.
You know, how deep is that, and can you give an elevation?
Yep, so we have an overflow drain right here. It's called out as YD2, which would be yard drain 2. That is set at elevation, it's actually 118.35 now. It was 118.25. We adjusted it up just because with the profile up, we had to adjust the yard drain up. But basically that yard drain is the max elevation that water will be. Once elevation rises to that, once water rises to that elevation, it's gonna go through that yard drain, which is basically the overflow, and then it hits the outlet pipe that goes out.
Now, will any of the vegetation in the focal point be in standing water? And if so, for how long? Can the vegetation tolerate?
Yeah,
that?
Ferguson has a specific plants list that the contractor will have to choose from. This specific focal point and its size requires 45 plantings throughout, but there are specific plants that are approved for use within the focal point, and their intention is to be submerged.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would suggest, since a lot of these points were raised by the Lunas, and this letter was actually written in response to the Lunas' concerns, maybe it would make sense now to, and I know that they've had a chance to review this, so maybe we could ask them for their response to the responses.
Sure. Why
Are
don't we
you comfortable doing that?
take a pause in our commission review and ask, would you like to come up and
And I will also say that she did email me this. I didn't have a chance to print it out or forward it to the commission, but we do have what she sent.
I think I sent it
Actually,
to
I think I
everyone.
–
have that.
yeah, I think we all got it.
Yeah.
I
Joel
didn't
wanted
read
me
it,
to
but-
clarify that I sent the letter and not both of us, but I do read it to him and ask him to check it too. But, so I did break up.
I'm sorry, can you just
Oh, yes, I'm
restate your
sorry.
name and-
Ruth Luna, 10 Carter Drive.
Thank you.
So I'm glad that they are not setting it into the seasonal high groundwater. I was curious, I didn't include in the letter I sent, will they be digging into it still nonetheless to be installing it? And I pulled out points from the letter I sent today as far as items that I would recommend you ask the peer review to address. I noticed that the peer review's last date of reviewing does not reflect either the June supplement or this August supplement.
I forwarded him all of the new submission today,
Okay,
so he
thanks.
will be reviewing that.
Okay, so I would be curious about, presumably their LSP at Beta, as far as what's the potential impact of the stormwater to contamination that is on the site, and for example, what that might do to the plume in terms of you want to know what's going to be the effect of all of this off-site as well. I would like to know what Beta would say about the amount of total phosphorus that they would assign to a focal point. I provided a table in the letter that shows there's quite a range that states will assign to it, and that, I don't know if that's just based on what their regulations require. Massachusetts does not assign a total phosphorus to it. I also like to have the peer review comment on whether there is benefit in increasing the soil depth to 24 inches, that providing some more treatment there. I also want to know, as far as the bridging stone, that they've reduced it to 4 inches, and on their basic design for focal point, it's set at 6. And I noticed that Rhode Island specified that 6 is the minimum they would accept. So I'd like to know what the peer review would say on it being reduced to 4 inches. And seeing that what they submitted only had a sentence saying they have appropriate planting, I found in another submittal using focal point that they gave a planting thing, and maybe that's what he's referencing that Ferguson has. So I included that planting plan as far as suitable plants. And basically they recommend facultative because at times the area is inundated and then at times it's not. And so that was, I think, like 6 pages I had on that I included. Another thing in my searching of trying to find information, I came across that there's, at least in Rhode Island, they restrict the size of contributing area for the Rain Guardian, which is the pre-treatment for the focal point, as well as its treatment in the back of the site. So I want to know what the peer review would say is there a limit to what size drainage area can contribute to an individual focal point? And I have all the numbers there in the letter. And, but otherwise, I re-listened to the hearing from last time, and I wanted to say that I appreciated the concern the commission showed for keeping the work out of the area of contamination, out of the level of seasonal high groundwater. And also the talking about having monitoring, and given that there isn't, my understanding is there's not a lot known. Certainly EPA makes it clear that infiltration and things like that in a contaminated site can raise issues that I would want you to pursue having monitoring to promote any early detection of whether the stormwater management is changing conditions, for example, the plume, as to where it is, where it's going. In terms of, you've got 2 discharge points directly to the wetlands, and then you have infiltration areas as well. So those would all be things that I would like to be looked at.
So
And
for clarity,
yes,
you put all this into an email.
that's all in the letter I sent, and
Yes.
I provided 2 attachments.
We've all
with
got it, and, okay, so we'll make sure Casey gets a copy of it.
And I did want to clarify, I haven't finished going through it. This was basically at 6:30. It's like, okay, I got to send this. So, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Right, so,
Thank you.
we're, obviously, we're gonna continue this, so, I think, rather than going around with, unless there's some clarifying questions, maybe, or is
Yeah,
that
they're just an issue that I want to bring,
Okay.
that's sort of been kicking around for a while, and,
Are you addressing Casey?
yes.
Yeah, okay.
So Casey, this issue of, the 18 inches versus 24 inches of a filter, soil filter media in the focal point, that sort of just keeps kicking around. Now, in your response, you said that, to have 24 inches in the unit does not improve the performance.
Correct. So all the testing was performed with 18 inches of media. So if you were to add 6 inches and go to 24 inches, there's no proven improvement to the treatment that you would get. The only thing that would do is then
Isn't
set
it
us back
logical to
under.
assume there would be?
I don't do that engineering, so I can't tell you.
So,
Not what, I didn't ask an engineering question.
No. Well, if you were to assume that it would increase, sure, but that's not the information that we have or that we've received from Ferguson. I actually asked that question directly to Ferguson, and they said, sure, you can install it with 24 inches, but it's not going to give you anything extra for treatment or percentages through their testing, because their testing only did 18 inches.
so I'd like to ask Ruth's response to that.
Yeah?
I have my own opinion, but I recognize I'm not considered a licensed engineer, so I would really like you to ask your peer review on
Good.
that. I agree with David, it's not logical that if you have treatment going through 18 inches, that you're not going to gain a benefit in going through 24, and I thought that that could be a way of resolving the question about phosphorus by having something that is that, and I've certainly seen in enough other things of where, yeah, I'd recommend speaking to
Given that you didn't step up to the microphone, and that's fine, that's fine. What I heard you say is you're not a licensed engineer as an expert in there. It sounded logical, and that you would like it to be reviewed by the Beta peer review. So I think that's fine. I think we're good with that.
And I think if, we're happy to send whatever information we have to Beta. I'm not sure exactly the question we're asking Beta. Are we asking them, do they feel 24 inches would provide more treatment, or do they feel?
That's my understanding of
I think
what
that's
the question is.
the question. That's-
Because, they're still just going to find the testing that was provided
Okay.
from Convergent and Ferguson. Without further testing of 24 inches, I don't think that answer exists. But, we're happy to send it to Beta and let them review it.
Let's play that out and see what happens. Yeah.
We're happy to do
Yeah,
it.
we'll see. Okay. How do we go next? What's next?
The next thing that I wanted to discuss was Friday. Paul, and I meant to bring it up here, of course I forgot. Paul delivered to me an immediate response action that was like that thick.
Paul Cohen.
Paul Cohen.
Yeah.
Which is required, that's required by law, is that the MCP requires that all, appropriate town agencies be notified. So that wasn't quite what I was expecting. So I would suggest that the commission think about having Mr. Weigel present that IRA, it's called, to the commission, and I wasn't suggesting that it be tonight, unless you're really comfortable doing it, I guess. But then
What is this? Is it
immediate
overloaded?
response action for cleaning up the contamination on the site, or
Yep.
or addressing it in some way, and that I was thinking that the LSP, Beta's LSPs, should review it in addition to what they already are reviewing, which is the soil management plan, soil management / groundwater management plan. So those are the things that I suggest the commission think about doing.
Okay, and Mr. Weigel, are you ready, or you want to hold off, or?
I'm ready. I mean, if there's questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I tell you what, why don't you give us a brief overview? Let us review what we have, and let our peer review see it, and then we'll bring this back up at the next.
So I actually do not have an online copy of that, which I'd like a link to. If you could email me a link to it, so.
So why don't we do that, a brief overview of what's in it?
Sure. My name is Ed Weigel. I'm a licensed site professional from Rue Associates, and I represent 270 owner. So as you know, we got a preview a couple of weeks ago. 270 owner purchased this piece of property and is seeking to redevelop it. As part of their due diligence to purchase the property, they installed some test borings and some monitoring wells. And the reason they did that is because both properties that across the street are up gradient are listed sites with DEP. They both had solvent releases. And in order to do the proper due diligence for our client, we needed to know whether we were going to need to design the building with some sort of vapor mitigation system because of these solvent releases. So that was the intent of what we started out to do. As part of our due diligence, we identified the fact that 3M is one of the sites up gradient, and 3M is a known manufacturer, user of PFAS. So given the situation here in the community, Rue Associates recommended that, hey, we should look at PFAS because, there's an issue here with potentially the upgradient owner. We took a look at PFAS, we found it. We found it on the upgradient property side. We found it on the downgradient property side. We looked for it in groundwater. We looked for it in soil. We found it in soil on the upgradient side. On the downgradient side, we didn't find any PFAS in soil, or at least not exceeding the reportable concentrations that are regulated by Mass DEP. So that's basically the full story. Part of the recent work that we've done is to do a groundwater flow direction, an elevation survey, so that we can confirm groundwater flow direction. That flow direction is presented in our downgradient property status completion report, which is also an IRA completion report, which strongly concludes that groundwater is flowing across our property from upgradient sources. And based on the data and the information that we've collected during the investigation, we've come to the conclusion that the upgradient properties are the source of the contamination that we're finding at 270. So that's an overview of basically how we found the contamination, and we've filed our report with DEP. We've notified the upgradient property owners as required by Massachusetts regulations. Now we need to wait for Mass DEP to acknowledge, that this is an issue, and I would encourage, folks here or in the community to say, hey, I know PFAS is a big issue. It's a big issue for our community. It's a big issue for DEP. DEP, what are you doing with respect to PFAS for our community, which is dealing with it right now? Maybe we can get these other two properties to look at themselves, identify a source, and start to address this.
Okay.
That's all?
Well,
That's a big ask.
It's a big ask, yeah.
I don't disagree with you.
Well, I mean, that's
That's
what.
how you fix it, yeah.
That's the way DEP has laid their regulations out. Is that we have to identify who's responsible for this contamination, and we have to make sure that they're doing what they need to do to address it.
Yeah, where's the source?
Yeah, where's the source?
Yeah.
And we've helped here.
Does
We've-
Electrometals still exist?
I don't believe it still exists as a company. It's certainly not in operation there
Was
anymore.
it sold off, or did it go bankrupt, do you know?
That I don't know.
3M does.
3M still exists.
So is 3M acknowledged the receipt of the report you did? or
Not to us.
Not to you. But you don't know what their response is. Right, okay.
Okay. So any questions from the commission? Dave, yeah?
What's in the site itself, when you've discovered PFAS, what percentage of the site can you assume PFAS is on? 100%? 5%?
So if we're talking about the 270 property.
Yes, yeah, because that's the
Right,
application.
sure. So that's what the groundwater data that we collected show is that 100% of the 270 property, the groundwater is impacted by this release.
Okay.
All of the groundwater is affected.
You found it in every monitoring well.
It's present in every monitoring well over standards in every well,
Ouch.
upgradient and downgradient.
Ouch. Okay. Interesting.
And Ed, I assume that your IRA report has the soil data?
Yes, it does.
Because we
And-
had some discussion about that
Right.
last time.
And I apologize, for the thick report. I mean, it is 333 pages, and the reason why it's so long is because we have to attach all the lab data, and they have to go through a lot of procedures to show that the data are compliant.
Well, and I don't think every single last figure needs to be looked at by Beta, but I would suggest that the commission have it peer reviewed in the context of the development of the property, redevelopment of the property, and the issuance of an order of conditions by the commission.
Yeah, I
You know,
agree.
And, I mean,
Yeah.
another way of saying that is, let's be sure they focus not on all of the MCP issues, just those issues that affect our jurisdiction.
Well, that's where
Right?
I'm at
Is
too.
that where you're going?
Focus, yeah, focus. We gotta really focus what we want the
Right.
LSP peer review to do. you know, let's have a discrete list of what we want them to do, so we can kind of put this thing in a position where we can make a decision when we come back next time, have that information from them, technical information we need, and do it. So, yeah, focus is key, and maybe, you know, David, we can kind of figure out what those key things are that we need back.
Yes, I already have in my head a list of questions. Maybe, Peter, you could send me
I would
yours.
suggest if any of you have questions that you specifically have, send them to David. I'm just a little confused, David. Do we have two peer reviewers with Beta? Is one civil and one's LSP, or is it one?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
okay.
we
So-
have someone reviewing the civil side, which is basically the focal point.
Yeah,
And then we have
got
an
it.
LSP reviewing.
Got it, okay.
those issues.
Because I'm going, there's a lot of work here, and we're piling it up on Beta, and I know we have a time, you know, we're trying to make this happen, so parallel helps there that we got two different sides. Okay, so, yep.
This site was first constructed in 1987. Does anyone know if any other occupant of that site may have contributed to this problem? Or are you just concluding it was Electrometals and 3M?
The conclusion that it's from across the street is based on all of the data that we've collected. So it's not only is it, you know, the groundwater data, the soil data, it's also the historical research that we've done. Regarding what was happening at 270. We know that, you know, the building that's there now was constructed in the late 80s, and it was primarily used by a software company. You know, it was built for a software company. They were, you know, writing code. So our understanding is that the current building that's there, you know, they weren't using PFAS, they weren't making it, you know, it was just an office building. Prior to the office building, our research shows that there was a florist there. So, you know, another, you know, agricultural use.
Yeah.
In a barroom,
In a barroom.
It's further down, wasn't it?
right next door,
Cultural
Where, you
loss.
know,
right
was?
next door, right across from Elliott Street.
But just picking up on Dave's comment, I mean, that's one of my questions I ask myself is, what's the probability that 3M and the other organization, manufacturer, what's the chances that they dumped stuff on this site?
Well, 3M's been there for a long time, and the trouble is if Electrometals doesn't exist, it's gonna be hard to chase them.
Electrometals, yeah.
Well, the way the rules in Massachusetts work, it's the property owner who's responsible.
Exactly.
So-
So they
so-
could be long gone, and whoever owns that property, they're
Yeah.
legally
That's right.
responsible.
They're responsible.
Be careful what you buy.
You said Electrometals was 275?
Five.
Did I see that? Where is that? Is that, if you're standing at 270 and looking across at 3M, is
To the right.
275 to the right?
Yeah.
Right.
3M's to the
Up where
left.
that new office building is, maybe?
Electrometals is to the right.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, are we good?
Yeah,
Anything else we
Yeah,
want
I think so. I just need the link to the
Sure.
IRA.
Yep,
Email
okay.
to me. Thank you.
So,
Are our peer reviewers available to do this work? Do we know?
we think so.
Yes, yeah, that's been
Yeah,
understood.
so we all have homework to review the documentation in the interim. Come up with questions if you have specific questions, especially on this part, to get them to David to go to the peer reviewer. We have Ruth's letter, which many of us haven't read, although she just gave us a good summary of it.
Yeah, and I'll distill the questions out of her letter to forward to Beta.
As well, okay. Anything else that you're looking for from us? Right now, the 22nd of August is, I believe, is our next meeting.
Yes.
Should we expect any revisions or any other material from tonight forward? So
Once
when
we
we're reviewing-
receive-
What we're reviewing is what we have.
Correct. So once we receive something back from Beta, we'll prepare a response. That was actually leading into my next question. As far as a to-do, I don't know if Ruth's letter requires a response from us or if it's mainly just directed at a request for peer review. I haven't read it, but if you would like, we can prepare
Well, I noticed you
responses.
nodding and as she was going through it, so you're going to send him a copy?
Yes,
So
yes.
if you send him a copy, if you want to do a quick response, that would
Right.
be, I think
Just
that
want
would
to
be
make sure
helpful.
we provide everything the commissioner
Yeah, I think that would
wants,
be
so.
helpful.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and we'll compare notes with Beta's responses to the same
You
question.
can tell we value Ruth's input.
We do.
It's helpful.
We do.
Just one quick question. So I think I got my question answered earlier, and that is, we're going to engage Beta for more review of the IRA?
Yes.
And
Yes.
and-
Beta
and the-
LSP
some-
on that.
Right?
Yes,
and,
in addition to what
in
they
addition
were
to civil,
already-
which is already underway.
Yeah, and also the soil management and groundwater management plans.
Got it. Great. I appreciate the board and David, all your work. I know getting this stuff to the peer reviewers is no easy task, but we appreciate the sooner it gets there, the sooner we can get going. So thank
Okay.
you for your time. Appreciate it.
So I think that closes the conversation. I take a motion to continue the continuance, I think, is what we're looking for.
So moved. I moved that
So
we,
moved from
Mr. Chair, that we
Chris.
continue this meeting to our next meeting, which is on August 22nd.
Second from Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ruth and Joel, for your inputs as well. Thank you to the applicants. Okay. We are moving right along here. Next on the list, certificate of compliance. David, give us an update on what this is.
Well, there really isn't too much to update on my end. I think the way we left it the last meeting is that, my recommendation to the commission was that, similar to reviewing wetland delineation, the commission hire a third-party review consultant at the applicant's expense to review the site for compliance.
This is National Grid.
This is National Grid,
Yeah, this is National
yes.
Grid.
Yes, so I forwarded, since the last meeting, I forwarded the commission both the order of conditions and the request for certificate of compliance, which had some additional information in it, primarily the photographs.
So, as I understand this situation, National Grid worked with, I'm forgetting, BC?
BSC Group,
BSC.
yeah.
Are they on?
I believe so. Allison?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Allison. Hello.
This is Hi,
So-
Allison from BSC.
And so, they've hired BSC to do this review of
To
the
certify
site.
that the work is complete and is in compliance with the order of conditions.
And what you're suggesting is that we have a separate independent review?
Yes, working for the commission. Again,
That's not, what we have is not an independent review.
Right.
right, I mean, it's not to impugn BSC Group or suggest that,
Right.
they don't do quality work. I've certainly worked with BC Group a lot over the years, and they do good work, but again, I just think it's analogous to like doing a peer review for a wetland delineation.
So what,
How big a job would that be?
and how long would it take?
Well, I think I mean, not, I think the easement, it's the entire easement, not all of it is in the commission's jurisdiction. I think it would probably take the better part of a couple days, I would think. You think that's a reasonable estimate, Allison?
No, because, our field inspector was able to walk the entire site, which included 5 towns, within a day and a half. And she was able to look at every single wetland crossing and every single area within buffer zone that we had a soil boring, and was able to pull together a representative photo log for the commission to review. So we were able to be there on a weekly basis to ensure compliance with our permits and the conditions of our permits. And I stand by my signature, but I defer to the commission on their comfortable and how comfortable they are with BSC's
Okay.
request for certificate of compliance.
But in terms of timing, I heard you say, David say 2 days, and you say a day and a half. I think that's more.
Yeah, Rachel walked the entire project in a day and a half.
Okay,
Actually, we inspected every single active site within a day.
Yeah.
Every week. Yeah,
So, yeah, we're not talking 2 weeks of work or anything like that. It's
absolutely not.
small,
No.
single days. So I take a.
Can National Grid say no?
Yeah, then they don't get their certificate of compliance, possibly, depending on, the commission's
They have a
decision.
history of not being particularly agreeable, right?
Well,
Yes, that's me saying.
No comment.
Not you. Okay.
Editing.
I think it's a good idea to have it, I respect these things because we have used you guys and your work's good, but it truly isn't independent unless we do
Yeah,
it.
so I'll take a motion then.
I move we request, what's their formal name? BCS?
No, oh, no, you're moving for, to get a peer review
Yeah.
done, not BCS.
Well, no, peer review, I don't care who it is.
Right.
Right, so the motion would be,
If we hire them, they're independent.
Right.
Right. That's-
well, at the applicant's expense.
Would you prefer somebody else?
Yeah, I have somebody,
Okay.
I have somebody in
Then let's
mind.
just use the word peer review.
Yeah.
Okay, I move we hire a peer review to review the request of certificate of compliance for 129-0923 and deliver it to the Conservation Commission.
Can I ask, what's the, why are we looking for this peer review? Do we have concerns somewhere?
Because it's so big, I think.
That,
Yeah, it's a large, you mean rather than having me do it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, because it's a really large area, and
So just to answer, I think if it was a much smaller area, Dave would go out and check
that's
on it.
right.
Sure.
And he's so busy, the idea is he can't give up 2 days to do
Okay.
this work.
All right.
So I
It would
think
be
that's a
really
reasonable.
Yeah, just trying to understand why we're doing it.
So I think that's reasonable, because we would normally, in almost any other circumstance, if it wasn't this much work, you'd be like, I'll go spend 2 hours and check it.
Yes, just like, I often check a wetland delineation.
Yep.
But if it's 400 flags, then
Right.
we should probably hire a peer reviewer.
Okay, so I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I had a question though before we vote. So, I mean, what type of expense do we have any idea, like, what expense this is? How many
2
billable
days.
hours it might be, or?
First thing I do, request for a proposal. Send the peer reviewer, the project plans, the order of conditions.
$5,000, Chris? $5,000 a day?
Oh, no. For one person?
No,
Well, for doing all the research, doing the.
Just throw a number.
report-
Are we talking
report-
$3,000?
Report writing, right?
I
$2
don't
grand.
think.
2 or
I
3?
don't think we're talking 10 grand, yeah.
2 or 3,000 roughly is ballpark?
Then I didn't say that.
Okay, so, does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah,
The general ballpark
yeah, I
cost?
was curious, yeah, what we're looking at.
So, I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
A second from Bill Vines. Any other discussion?
Yeah, just one more point. I mean, over the years, BSC Group has really been good.
Yes.
They've come in before us, their work is good. So I'm going to support this motion, because honestly, I think it's a good practice, but,
You're not
it
impugning.
doesn't- Yeah, exactly. I do have a real high level of confidence with the type of work that BSC does, and when they sign something, I'm really good about it. So I think, let's see what happens. It's a good practice to do it, and David really can't do this follow-up, so let's, cross all the, Ts and dot the Is.
Okay. Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay, all in favor, it passed. So David, you'll go and do a request for a quote from
Yes. Yes.
your recommended peer review?
Yep, and I can bring it back to the commission for review
Okay,
after I get that.
okay. Okay, Allison, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Yep.
You as well. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, David, next on our list is the usual suspects list.
Well, we got 35 Brick Hill Road out of the way.
Yep, that's good. We're knocking them off.
So there is progress to report at 221 Littleton Road.
Yep.
So the enforcement order caught their attention. Got a call from the owner's attorney. Met today with the owner's attorney, the owners, a gentleman and his wife, and their engineer was on speakerphone. So they showed me.
I'm sorry, just as a reminder, this is the property on Littleton Road.
Yes.
Right around the corner from Hunt Road.
Yes.
I think it's Hunt Road, yeah, right at the crossroad, where there were oil trucks at one time, a number of oil trucks parked on the lot.
Yes.
So-
Are they gone?
They are. So I should have said, yeah, I should have said, they haven't moved.
They've been gone at least a week or so.
At least, yes. So if you recall, the enforcement order required the filing of an RDA. Both the attorney and the engineer were concerned, well, you know, are you pretty sure it can be a negative determination? And I said, well, no, I don't know for sure. You know, I really suggested that they file a notice of intent. But then the issue came up, well, what really is the scope of the notice of intent? What should that be? I strongly recommended that it be it include compliance with the stormwater standards. They said, well, and I said including, you know, the stormwater. I can't remember. I should remember whether it's 5 or 6. The LUPL, land use with higher potential pollutant loads. Well, the engineer really kind of objected to that. Said because it's only 3 oil delivery trucks. You know, that's really not a fleet. And you know, we've had this internal discussion about what is a fleet. So the way we left it was that they would come to the next commission meeting to see if we can get a sense from the commission of, you know, because what the engineer was proposing was basically just to do a berm. You know, there's an existing parking area. He said, well, we'll just add a berm to that to keep any runoff from going into the wetlands.
So that's all they want to do is what they've been doing.
Basically, they're not proposed. They weren't going to do any new pavement. So, you know, I really didn't feel comfortable speaking for the commission on that. I felt that there needs to be a conversation, discussion with the full commission. You know, what should the scope of the NOI be, or if it should be an NOI.
Well, I'm glad we got their attention.
Yep.
And I'm glad
Yep.
we're making some progress. I did drive by, and I was really glad to see the trucks were gone. It looked like the lawn was mowed.
Carl,
Somebody
do
was
we know
paying
if the
attention.
trucks went somewhere else in Chelmsford?
That's a really good
Afraid to
question.
ask.
That's a good question, Dave.
We don't know.
We don't know.
Right down by the river.
Maybe they're in Bill Ricka, Dave.
Yeah, Bill Ricker. Ooh.
So
Jurisdiction.
All right, so they will be on the agenda for next
Yes.
meeting?
Yes.
And their engineer will be attending?
yes, and it turns out it's the same engineer. It's also Bruce Ringwald, which is also the engineer for 201 and 203.
Oh, okay. So-
Boston Post Road, in which I will move on to and say I did receive a notice of intent
Oh,
for
Chelmsford Lumber.
Chelmsford Lumber Company. So that will be on the 22nd as well. So
Okay.
I guess Bruce and Mr. Ringwald will be here for both.
So sorry, Mark, we're not gonna not have a meeting. You've been looking to have a week off. We're having a busy
And
summer.
it's only going to get busier after
Yeah,
that,
I know.
unfortunately.
Sorry, okay.
So now, so that's scheduled. What I again is similar to our previous discussion on the request for certificate of compliance. I recommend the commission have the stormwater review or stormwater management peer reviewed, and I would also recommend that peer review of the wetland delineation be done in
This
this
is
case.
for 201?
This is for
Chel-
201 and
Chelmsford Lumber,
203. So, and Peter, do you want me to raise the issue you've raised about, you know, the amount of tree removal on the property? You want the peer reviewer to take
Did
a
you
closer look at that?
second guess yourself on that?
I think that's worth a conversation. I looked at the Google Earth twice, and I think the first time I looked at it, it showed a lot more trees missing than the second time I looked at it. And of course, John and I live near that site, and so you kind of watch it driving by. So I still think it is a question. I don't
that's-
know whether the stuff that was removed were trees or shrubs, but they were definitely in the buffer.
Okay, well, that's certainly something that
So
the
it
peer
makes
reviewer
sense to
can
take a
look
look.
at, you know, by doing the
Yeah.
exact same thing, looking at historical aerial.
Yeah, and I want to be clear, the reason I feel this way, besides, I think that's what the regs say, this is the priority habitat. This is part of River Meadowbrook. which the state has identified as important going forward, as well as it being the endangered habitat, although I don't think this parcel is part of the endangered habitat.
No, I don't think it is.
So it's also flood storage, you know, all those good values.
And it's certainly been my experience in the past that removal of trees can affect where the wetlands are located. You know, so I think that kind of goes hand in hand with peer review of the wetland delineation. So does that sound good to the commission that?
Yep.
Go
I
ahead
think-
and, again,
Nodding, yes.
contract for that. peer
Yeah,
review.
okay, I see nods, so
Okay.
that sounds good. Anything on 0 Littleton Road on the?
No, I've
Brook,
been meaning to touch base with the owner. The last I had heard from him was that he was hiring a new surveyor. And it's just been so busy the past couple of weeks, I haven't had a chance, but I will definitely get back to him.
Well, you don't have to spend much time on it until you see a foundation.
I hope it doesn't get to that
Well,
point.
I mean, there was activity, there was disturbance there in that area
right.
that, and so we've got his attention, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's keep moving on. Next up is the review of the conservation restriction for Warren Pole. So if you want to put that onto screen view. So what I'd like to preface this with is, this is a review of the conservation restriction status at this point in time. This is new for the commission because Dave and I and David Koontz have been working this with the Chelmsford Land Trust. We'll go into some details on how that, how that's structured and everything. And then after we have our discussion, I know we have a couple of representatives of the Land Trust in the audience and on the Zoom. So then we can open it up for any questions, comments, clarifying questions at the end after we go through this. So what I thought I'd do is go through this. I have a slide deck here that kind of walks you through the document. Dave sent the document out to each and every one of you, and I know you spent hours reading it in detail. So I think what I thought would help you along with going through this. And go through this with this presentation. So why don't you keep moving ahead on the slide deck?
Carl, just the timeline is, Carl and I would seek the Conservation Commission's approval of the document.
Right.
Then it will be delivered to the town manager and through him to
The select board.
the
Yeah,
select board.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and then it would go to the state.
Yeah, so you'll see that at the end. I have something on the end. So this is just, yeah, so let's just go through it. This is
Carl,
the,
Just kind of just a quick question. So our purpose today, is it just kind of to review, kind of educate the commissioners on
Yes.
kind of what the document's doing, the obligations of the parties, and then identify any open issues that still need to be closed?
yes.
But we're
and
not voting
so-
tonight to
No,
approve
no,
up or
in
down.
fact, I don't want to vote tonight because what happened is, and I was talking with Becky earlier, and I don't know if I mentioned it to you, Dave, but I went through in excruciating detail in the last couple of days, the CR. And what I've realized is we've been working this in a lot of detail for almost 3 years now. And you get to the point where there's only like 2 or 3 issues, and then you step back and look at the whole thing, you go, oh, there's some things that we should have done a little different. So I don't think there's anything that's what I would call controversial, but I think there's some things that I'd like to adjust and change, and, I'll talk about some of it here tonight, so that it's not blindsiding the land trust. And I think they're actually generally positive, good things that will make it better for submitting it to the state, because part of it is when you think about it, that the state has, what I did was, just so you understand, the state supplies us with a template for the document. And we took that template, and, oh, by the way, there's a new version in April.
I know, it's probably taken so long.
We don't have to meet the new version. We can stay with the one we have. I took that template and compared it with our document and what's there. And in fact, most of what we have in there, for the most part, is just copied word for word boilerplate from the document. You pick and choose certain things, you eliminate certain things based on the situation. So what I want to start here with, this is the initial offer to the town, that this was an offer from the families back in I think it was the May 2020 timeframe. through the Landvest organization to sell the property for conservation of the property. And they were offering it to the town first, but in general, it was possibly going to be offered to conservation groups if the town declined. But that was the offer to the town, and it was for permanently, permanently protect an iconic 54-acre property and make it accessible to the public. So that was the initial offer. Let's go to the next page. This is the town meeting warrant, which was in August of 2020. We had a special town meeting, and our good member of the board, Chris Garahan, was at the meeting with masked up like everyone else in COVID time, and he got up and said, "I support this," and it was voted on and unanimous approval to use Community Preservation Act funding. And so that meant that the town was authorized, the town management was authorized to go ahead and buy the property. But because it's Community Preservation Act funding, you have to have a perpetual restriction. That's per the Community Preservation Act law, which is all that legal stuff in there. But we have to do the perpetual restriction, which is the conservation restriction. Next page. So then the acquisition was completed in October of 2020. I think it was around the 1st or 2nd or 3rd, early in the month. And then right around that time, Town Manager Paul Cohen asked Dave, as the chair of the commission, to negotiate with the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust to get the conservation restricted documented. So that was where we got our charge, our direction. Next page. We, just the quick definition of a CR, it's a legally enforceable agreement whose purpose is to ensure permanent protection of specific conservation values. That's important. We have to define what those values are. And then while permitting limited land uses consistent with the protection of said conservation values. It's a legal document. It's going to be approved by both the local and state authorities. It does go to the state DCS. It's recorded. The CR is recorded at the Registry of Deeds. In the terminology, when you go through and read this document in the detail, I know you're going to read it all in. The grantor is the town of Chelmsford. That's the wording. The grantor is us, and the grantee is the Chelmsford Land Conservation Trust. So they're the ones that hold the conservation restriction. Next page. This is just a quick overview of the structure of the document. Any place you see the red boilerplate, we just copied and pasted essentially from the document, or we just took the template wording. And for the most part, it's completely exactly like the state document on those paragraphs, those sections. Section 3A and 3B we will talk about in just a minute. We'll get to that. But for the most part, what you'll see here is, and if you go to the purpose is, that's the one area that as I went through it today, I think we need to spend a little more time reviewing that offline, not here in the meeting, but I read it and I said, I think we can buff this up a little better for presenting it to the state. I think there's some things we can add to that. The rest of it's kind of boilerplate. There's 2 more pages like this. Go to the next page, please. It's a 27-page document, by the way, right now. I think this page is all boilerplate. All of these sections are boilerplate. And then the next page, go ahead, is also mostly boilerplate. It does have I got this official term, legal mumbo jumbo on there. I was reading it, and I'm going, I don't even know what this is. And I asked my lawyer wife, and she said, yeah, you can put legal mumbo jumbo. That's okay.
So that's how they get the big bucks.
Yep. But it's just boilerplate stuff that's in all these documents. And to her point, she makes a really good point. This is how these documents have evolved over the years because this wording works. So don't mess with it. Okay, I got it. So the baseline documentation report, I'll point that one out right there. That is a separate document. The boilerplate wording in this document just says there will be a BDR, and then we will either paste it into this document or attach it as a separate document, but it has to be done. We are 98%, maybe 95% done on that. We have a few things to do. We'll talk about that in a minute. It does talk about who signs the document, and then there's some exhibits, which includes the legal description of the premises, which is lots of deed-type wording. The second part is the plan of the premises, which we need an updated surveyor plan, because we've recognized in the meantime that there are some small gaps, but a couple of gaps that need to be fixed. And that will drive the baseline document being completed. That can't be completed until that surveyor review is complete. And that's, David's working on getting that done. We'll talk a little bit about the next steps. And the last part, Exhibit C, and actually there's another thing we have to add, but it's easy. But Exhibit C is the new parking and driveway that we put in the last year and a half. I've asked DPW to give us an as-built plan that we'll be able to include as Exhibit C. Technically, it should be part of B, because the way the template says Exhibit C should be a copy of the town meeting vote output, which is a PDF. I pulled that off of the town website. I have that. So if you want to follow the template, which I think is always good,
Yes.
if they say Exhibit C is the town meeting results, then let's make that Exhibit
Just
C.
give them a reason to
Okay?
slow it down.
Yep, so we can make those changes. So, next page. So, real quickly, these are the prohibited acts and uses, and if you think back to the beginning of the thing, it talked about the CR is describing the values of the property and what's prohibited and what's permitted. So these are the things, and I didn't go into all the wording because that's all in the document. You can read the wording if you want to read the wording.
have.
There's a lot, you have, I know.
They've read.
I know they have. They've
I
all
read
read
it.
it. I know.
I have.
And so these are the general things. The one thing on this page that we changed, that we added versus the standard wording was the animal husbandry, which you can see on the bottom. We're saying we're not going to allow cattle, beef cattle, poultry, swine, horses, et cetera, et cetera. We're putting that in explicitly in the document. That wasn't in the, I don't think it's in the template, which, so I'm not, unless it, I don't know, but that's in there. We're in agreement with the land trust on this. So far, everything here, we're all in agreement with the land trust, I think, on everything so far. So without going into more detail on that, some of these things, there are some exceptions that you'll see in the permitted, and the wording shows all of that. So let's go to the next page. Without going into all the detail, this is the permitted acts. So in the permitted acts, what I've got here is the asterisks. Those are sections of the document where we did some level of changing or adding of wording.
I'm sorry, what is?
There's asterisks
Yes,
on
yeah,
certain
gotcha,
ones.
yep.
The other ones, we just took the wording out of the template and left it as alone. The other ones, for example, the third one, composting and burning, the template just says composting is permitted. We added burning. We said we want to allow burning on the site. And there's some wording in there about how close to the water and all that kind of stuff. So you can look at all that detail. The trails section, we added some more information. By the way, the formatting in this document is not good. It needs to be reformatted, but that's on my list. Chris?
Got a question around the motorized vehicles. What's kind of the intent around that?
So the intent is that we're not allowing the site to be used by people with motorized vehicles, for example, motorbikes, anything like
Three-wheelers
that.
and- yeah, yeah.
You can drive cars onto the parking lot and off the parking lot. We can have tractors on the property for maintenance of the site. If we have to have special vehicles on the site for projects like we're building a new trail through the woods or something like that, we need logging equipment, we can do that.
And emergency.
And emergency vehicles, I think that's it. And what I'd like to add into which I realized in going through this detail, would be to also allow, because right now I don't think it is allowed, is to allow the use of a tractor for something like a special event. So for example, if we wanted to do a hayride, that we could do that. It would have to be like, we would have to approve it, but it wouldn't be a regular thing. It would be like twice a year or something like that. So some kind of wording like that would allow that, special event kind of motorized vehicle.
How about handicap?
Handicapped is allowed. There's some constraints, but in general, that's allowed, yep.
Now, on
The other thing, I'm sorry, Dave, the other thing that's kind of funny is, and I realize this going through the document, is on the prohibited page, if you go back, David, it says altering and relocated stone walls. Where is it? Yeah, the second to last, third to last bullet on the right. And then we say it's permitted. So I feel like we gotta sort of reconcile how those two are both in there the same way.
I think there's more than one.
Yeah. I think it's probably okay, but I didn't read it in the detail that I'd like to, so.
Under the permitted acts,
So go back to permitted, please, David.
most of them, I don't know the exact count, require the land trust's approval for us to do them. But their approval cannot be unreasonably withheld.
Right.
But that makes them part of the management process in that sense.
It turns out, Dave, I counted that, and
Yeah.
it's 9 out of that page,
Yeah.
9 of them out of whatever that number is, 15 or something like that. So when I looked at that, and I agree with you, they require the land trust, but I look at each of them, and they're all like fairly significant things. They're not simple things. They're like, we're gonna build a whole new trail kind of thing. So that's fine. And we have wording in there that says it should be done in a reasonable, responsive time. And so, yep. And again, on this page, the asterisks note that we made some significant change, moderate to significant change to the wording, or even added a section. I don't think there was a section for driveway and limited parking, and we added that. The agricultural activities, we went into a fair amount of detail on that one. You can go into the document. These are the areas that I think you want to focus on versus all the other template
The
stuff. that's-
prohibited and the permitted.
Yep. Next page. The agricultural activities, I did put this in here. This is the way we've worded it. I'm still thinking we could tweak this a little bit, but it's okay. Basically, we're saying, if you think about it as not tilling the land, a lot of other agricultural activity would be permitted. And again, the word permitted means we're gonna do it. Doesn't mean we're gonna do it. It means we're not prohibiting it. There's a difference between permitted and gonna do it. So that just means we're not prohibiting these particular activities.
And the ones that did, the two that got a lot of comment from various people were things that are being done in Chelmsford, collecting tree sap for human consumption and beekeeping and production of honey. There is a lot of that activity in Chelmsford now, and we thought the site was a good spot to continue that if it made sense. So that's why that's here.
Yep. So I would encourage you to read that through, feedback, any concerns, comments to myself or Dave or David. Let's go to the next page. So this was one of the areas.
The one before that?
I made another change, sorry. I didn't
Is
say
it
that
after
yet,
this one?
sorry. This, yeah, we'll get there in a minute. No,
I'll read it
yeah,
there.
yep. So, the history of this is a mosquito aerial larvicide staging on the site. So there was staging and distribution of larvicide on the site for many years. This is done by the CMMCP, the Central Mass Mosquito Control Project. They do it in coordination with a contractor and with the town, the Board of Health. The Warren Pole site has been historically the site for this activity. I believe it's for both Chelmsford and Billerica. They do it on ponds in these two towns. And this is putting larvicide into the water, and this helps to control the population of mosquitoes in standing wetland areas, ponds. As we all remember, back about 3 months ago in April, we voted to not allow this activity on the property, sort of independent of the CR. In fact, I don't think we even talked about it in the CR.
It was very independent.
Yeah, we weren't really, it was just kind of like, hey, this is going on, and we realized that we had to kind of close the site, and it was hard to close the site, but we were uncomfortable with the safety of people. We weren't sure we could really close it that well, because people they kind of come in from the woods on the site. And so we voted to not allow this on the property and into the future. And we asked David to talk to Paul Cohen about finding another site with the Board of Health and with the CMM.
A year to find a site.
Yeah, and we said this year, it's already happening, but going forward for next year, so there's time to find an alternate site to do this. I know it's not an easy thing to do, to find a place that's open for, all the requirements of a helicopter coming in and all that, but I gotta think that the town can find that. In the meantime, the CR, we had, in the CR, in the conservation restriction, we had permitted it. We had explicitly had wording in there that allowed it. As a result of the vote, the three of us were talking and we said, well, we just voted on that, we should change it, and we turned it in.
We as a commission, not we as the,
Yeah,
not
right,
we as the
right.
CR subcommittee.
Right, we as a
Wasn't
commission
agenda item.
voted to not allow it, so we as a, quote, subcommittee said, oh, we should modify the CR to align with that vote, and we moved it from the permitted to the prohibited. In the meantime, we've had some discussion with the land trust, and they're not in agreement with that. But what, I think what I would like to do, and I think this is the way it stands right now, because the version of the document that was sent to all of you it's the same version as, I think it's like the May 24th version, or something like that, with the mention of this larvicide staging is completely eliminated, not mentioned. So what that means is we're not addressing it. We've voted to prohibit it going forward. We still think the town should find an alternate site. But if things change, we can change that. We're not saying it's permitted, we're not saying it's prohibited. And when I think about it, there are a lot of things that we, like sort of an infinite number of activities that we don't permit or prohibit. We just don't address them. For example, we were talking about like having a hayride. We don't say anything about that, permitted or prohibited.
So how does that work when, if you decide you want to do that, how do you include the land trust or don't include the
50
land?
years from now, the Conservation Commission takes a vote to allow it.
Yeah, we could vote to allow it. I would think that if we were gonna do that on that site, it would still make sense to talk to the land trust might change and say, we don't think you should do it.
Right.
And in fact, when you go back and read the values in the document on the second section, I think some of that activity, the staging of this might actually be against that values. But from my point of view, it's kind of like, we don't have to deal with that. If we take it out of the document, then it's not an issue, it's a null point.
Billy,
I want to make the other point is that I know that part of the deal with the CMMCP is that they offered to clean the brook and the ditch maintenance. We still allow that, that's still allowed. If that needs to be done, it's still permitted, it's still in the permitted part. Specifically, dredging is not prohibited. Dredging is, at least my understanding of it, Peter, help me, but dredging is like putting a scoop into the mud versus cleaning a ditch would be pulling the sticks and the grass and the brush out. Am I
That would
roughly?
be my definition,
Yeah,
but
okay.
there could be some vagueness.
Billy,
And that hasn't changed. That wording has been in there all along.
to your point, Billy, you will recall with Oak Hill,
Right.
that's not under Conservation Commission's control forever. There is an opportunity to see, I think 50 or 60 years from now, if for some reason the town had another use for that property, it could be used for that. Same thing here, 50 years, some number of years in the future, a Conservation Commission may have a different opinion than the vote that we took this year. Or it might even be next year.
I didn't know that about Oak Hill, but
Yeah.
interesting.
Because it's somewhat unique. Remember that was taken by the town for back taxes?
Oak Hill.
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Yeah.
then the town gave it to conservation, so there was some idea of developing that originally
Yeah.
before, but that's an example, that's all.
So, I guess this one in particular has been, some contention with the land trust trying to work through this, and we've had a lot of conversations and discussions. And I'd be curious, before I go to the next page, I think the next page is the next steps.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what your thoughts are on this particular approach.
We voted on this once, though, didn't we?
We did, so again,
you
let me,
want to vote again?
no, we voted as a conservation commission to prohibit the staging going forward. This is, do we want to address it in the land, in the conservation restriction, or just ignore it? And my preference, what I would think makes sense, is to ignore it, because it's,
Was a vote in place, though, wasn't there?
Yes.
and so what that means is the vote holds. The vote stands, nothing changes. Nothing changes. All it means is that the document isn't addressing it. And so that we could change it. If we wanted to vote on it next year, we could change.
Yeah, exactly. It
But,
allows a
but
little
right
more
now, we voted
flexibility.
going forward,
You
yeah.
know, you got a little more flexibility, because if we were gonna try to amend it
Oh,
through this restriction process.
Very hard.
You can see, I mean, it's years in the making to get the thing approved. It needs all those local and state approvals, so amending something is like practically impossible.
I don't know if you can do it.
Oh, you can, but it's tough.
There's a,
It's
yeah,
tough.
that's actually one of those boilerplate sections that you don't want to read. But it's essentially, it says you got to go through the whole process again, at least the steps of the
And
process.
it's difficult, it's time consuming,
Yeah.
there's the
Money,
legal counsel
yeah,
involved on both sides, so, I mean, it gives us a little more flexibility doing kind of what we've done now. We took our vote, we've
Yep.
set our policy,
Stand by our vote.
and we do that, but it wouldn't be necessary to go the extra mile and put it in here in perpetuity, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Is that, am I getting nods? That's all I'm looking for is nods, unless somebody's like, okay. Let's go to the next page then, move on. This is the next steps, so, these are the things that are still on our plate to get done. We need to resolve the survey plan discrepancies, and David
These
is,
will take another 3 years.
well, it might. David's working with, I think it's gonna be Hancock
Hancock.
Surveying.
So Hancock is working on both the easements and
Okay, so,
Survey
yeah,
plans.
so the easements, there's an easement on Hall Road and an easement on Parker Road.
Remember, there are 4 individual parcels that make up Warren Pole, or 5,
It's 3 parcels,
and.
except that we discovered one that kind of
Right,
changed the
that's
way
the reason, so we
Yeah,
found stuff.
Yeah, that kind of just slightly changed the GIS survey profile. So that's the activity we want the surveyor
And the
to go
two-
in and
the
dig
two
in.
easements are not straightforward. Well, one of the 2 easements is not straightforward.
Yeah, they should have, I'm sorry, but editing comment, they should have been done already, but
Yeah.
we're still working. Complete the as-built plan for the driveway and the parking lot, because that will be part of Exhibit B. Modifications and changes as a result of any discussion we have here. And I will add, I'll talk with Dave and David and with the Land Trust, there are a few things, as I said, as I went through this in much more detail, fresh detail, I guess. You know, it's kind of like you can kill yourself, well, you can always find new stuff. But I have a couple of things that I think we can make some changes that I think will help us going forward. So some of that, we do need to clean up the document for formatting issues. It's a mess. We need to also define expectations for the grantee, for the land trust, on how to monitor the property, and I've had some conversations with Dale on this. We've talked about having an MOU. Let me talk about this for a second. The requirements for the grantee to monitor the site, essentially, they're holding the conservation restriction. And what the intent here is that we create a baseline of the site, which is the baseline document report. And it's a good-sized document with pictures, maps, description of the site. And so the idea is that you take that document and, you know, I don't know exactly how you do this, but you take the document and you walk the site once a year. The general requirement is once a year you review the site to that baseline and see if anything's changed. You're looking for things like encroachments, somebody throwing, yard waste over the wall onto our property, somebody building a fence on our property, somebody doing a driveway on our property.
There were probably about 40 or 50 abutting properties.
And maybe not that many, but pretty close. There's a lot of abutting of properties, there's a lot of land here. So the intent is that the land trust would review the site, probably walking with a couple of us, on an annual basis. I think it would be once per calendar year that you cover more or less the whole property. There's a couple places that are very inaccessible, so they're probably every couple of years is probably okay. And then create a report that gets sent to the conservation agent and the commission, and we would review it. If there's any actions that we need to take, we probably would have known before we get the report, because they'll tell us in the walk down, in the walkthrough. We are obligated to take action on those findings, and then that document would be stored as part of our record. The idea being that in 3 years, they could say, hey, we sent this to you 3 years ago, and you still haven't done anything. We need to now proceed with legal action, and there's all kinds of things in there about what that can be. But the idea is that they're trying to keep us honest. The property should be continued in perpetuity, meeting the values of why it was purchased. So that's kind of why I wanted to show at the very beginning, we had the offer to the town to buy the property, which was a conservation parcel. Then we had the warrant article to buy the property for open space purposes, and now we have the conservation restriction, and that was using Community Preservation Act. So you can see how it all ties together. And so that is this is like our O&M plans when we do with our applicants. This is the O&M plan for this site in a way, in that they're keeping us honest and keeping us, making sure that we're not putting solar field out there, or a baseball field, or a school, or something else, because, hey, the town bought it, we can do whatever we want with it. Nope, we bought it for this purpose. So that's where we asked the grantee to monitor the property, and we are talking about having an MOU that would describe what's expected. We haven't got to the point of agreeing or disagreeing on that, but that's the general idea of where we're at. Also, we need to finalize the baseline document report, which is, as I said, it's probably 95% done, but we have 4 or 5 things that need to be updated, and I think you've done a good job of not having her update it yet, because we keep finding some things, and we might as well have her do it once. So that's been, I appreciate that.
Spelling errors.
Yeah. And then finally, once all of that is completed and we have everything in place, the select board will then sign it. I say here, review with the select board. I'm of the opinion that I think it's a good time now, because I think some of these things are gonna take still 2 to 3 months before we're at the point of saying submit, select board review and sign. And so I'm gonna probably talk to Paul about getting on the select board's agenda to do more or less the same update with them, so that they get an upfront view of what's going on. And if they really want to read all the details, they can read them, but they'll have at least an idea of what they're looking for. And then in 2 to 3 months, hopefully when we get everything all buttoned up, they can just say, we're good to go, and sign it.
Just a couple of comments here, Carl. So actually, the next to the last step and the last step should be reversed. It actually gets submitted to the state for review first. And then the state comes back and says it's ready for local signatures.
Really?
Yep, that's how the process works.
Okay, well,
And then there should be another step added that the land trust signs. So.
Yeah, okay, and I put that note up in the top, all in coordination with town council and the land trust. So I was, yeah, but you're right, they have to sign it, yeah, they have to
But
sign
yeah,
it.
it gets submitted to the state first.
I'm not sure I'd put it in front of the state until the select board reviews it, though.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so, okay,
Formal review.
okay. Okay, that's a good clarification. So, any questions, comments from the commission? And then we'll ask if the visitors have any questions or comments after we go through it here.
No, I mean, I like that idea of like doing the review you were talking about with the select board, keeping them, they're our appointing authority for us, so keeping them informed. And then, obviously, you wouldn't submit to the state unless we had them on board to do that, but then the signatures would follow that process of, the state's got to approve anything, and then it goes off for signatures. No, looks good.
Okay. All right. And so, just, I really want to say I really appreciate David and Dave's work on this. We still have a little ways to go, and I also want to say I really appreciate working with the land trust. So I'll open it up to either if Dale's still online, or Becky, or I see a new member of the land trust, Dave Sperry, is here.
Dale is not with us any longer.
Okay.
Good to go.
go have dinner.
So do you have any comments or?
No, after
hearing, looking at this. I agree, and I look forward to the next steps.
Okay.
Great.
Basically, same here. I spent the past couple of days reading the restriction, getting a headache, reading other restrictions, getting more headaches. The Land Trust has 3 other restrictions in town.
Yeah.
But Land Trust needs to go back and look at and come up with MOUs for those also.
You don't have MOUs on the others? Not right now?
Not right now. So this is a good chance for us to come up with a common MOU and start some of the best practices.
Yeah, we have a stab at one. We'll be getting it to you guys shortly.
There's also a recommended manual out there for doing maintenance along this line. You want to roll into that?
Okay.
Don't make it long. Don't make it long.
No, it's not long, but there's a list of best practices that we can crank in.
Yep.
So, yeah, sounds reasonable going forward.
And the MOU is not part of the conservation restriction?
No, it's separate.
It's separate.
Yep. Okay.
The other thing, just keep in mind, these are recorded at the Registry of Deeds. So since I'm brand new to all of this, I went out to the Sudbury Land Trust, Sudbury Valley Land Trust.
Yep.
And pulled up their latest one that they submitted last year, and went side by side with our current one, and kind of came up with Carl's same conclusion that we've gotten a little too focused in some areas. We need to go back and revisit.
Yep. Yep.
Don't be afraid to look at other people's work.
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this whole process is that we need to do it. It's part of the law. It's the part of the CPA. It's all bought it, but we don't really have a deadline. I think we can all say we have earnestly tried to move this forward. We've had some delays here and there and struggles, but we are, both sides, I'm very sure, are earnestly trying to get it done and make it happen, but we want to do it right. And it is a in perpetuity document. It's not like, as you said, you can change it, but it's really, really, really hard. So you want to really be smart about what you put in there and what you leave out, what you put in. So
And I'll just add, though, that had grant funding been riding on this, there would have been a deadline.
yes,
There
yes,
most
that's
certainly
actually
would have been a deadline.
the little secret that we learned from somebody that knew this process and said, do you have money riding on this? We said, no, it's already bought. We already own the property. They said, you'll go to the bottom of the pile when you get into the state. So it's like, well, okay, so. And they don't really do a lot of monitoring other than maybe like, every 2 years they hire an intern to say, who's got open CRs in the state?
Yes.
That's about it. Okay.
Well, I want to say something. I want to thank Carl. That was a great presentation tonight. And really, I read the whole document, believe it or not. And it's a lot of work, and I want to thank everybody involved who worked on it. It's there's a lot of work, there's a lot of coordination, and thank you.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Second that.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, so we talked about Oak Hill. That was an interesting, we're talking about land management here. So just to reiterate on the bridge there, it is slightly off its whatever, but it's we all stood there and kind of jumped on it. It's safe. It's not, I'm not worried about some people walking on it. And by the way, that particular entrance, I think, is very lightly used for that site.
It's ugly and long.
Yeah, you have to walk across the DPW lot and all that, so I think it's very lightly used. But we do.
It's public.
And we do have an agreement with Christine. She's committed to giving us some help with some equipment to get in there and do that. But David, we need to talk about if we need to do an NOI or whatever we need to do to make sure we're doing it right, because there may be a little bit of equipment to make it right, but we need to make sure we do that correctly.
Only down by the stream, probably, in terms of an NOI.
Yeah, it's very minimal. It's maintenance. It's fixing something.
They
but
handpicked all the brush against it. It was loaded with
Yeah.
debris, and they had a couple of guys down there handpicked all the debris
I
up.
take it the
away from-
stream overflowed.
Oh, the stream was 30
the-
feet
the-
up
the
on both
bridge-
sides.
The water was probably halfway up the railing on the bridge.
Yeah.
Based on what, I didn't see that, but I could see it with
Yeah.
the banking. It was like, wow,
Yeah.
it came way up. But that bridge is solid.
It must be.
It's,
must be.
it's really solid.
That's
It's,
Jim Murray and his
yeah,
son.
it could be the best bridge in our town that's on our properties. Okay. Next one on our list is the Water District Well Exploration IMA.
Yes, so let me, I don't know if the commission wants to actually see the application, but it's because the commission is the owner of the property that it needs to sign off on the application. I think it's just a matter of the commission voting to authorize the chair to sign it.
This is the application from the Water Department to whom?
To Natural Heritage
Okay.
for
Oh, okay.
review under MISA.
Asking them to review the site?
Yes,
Yes.
so.
Do we know how long they take to do that?
Well, they're supposed to take only 90 days, and I think they do adhere to that pretty well now. It used to be sometimes a couple of years, but
Yeah, no.
now it's 90 days. I mean, this isn't a terrifically complicated project. They probably have a pretty standard, response.
And they should be somewhat familiar with the site, I think.
Yeah,
General-
yes,
yeah.
yes, because of Zoo New England's reporting.
Yep.
So, I can just bring up, I mean, there was quite a bit of information that we got from, the Water District, but I can bring up just the application.
While we're waiting, Mr. Sperry, did you hear me comment on the mill? Did you have to lower the dam with the rain and today and yesterday? Or not?
We've been in active management of the water level all summer.
Have you? Yeah. And was today exceptional or not? Just typical?
There's a one-day delay between a
Yes,
rainfall
yes.
and the time we peak at the dam.
Maybe it washed out the beaver dam upstream.
So the residents there keep an eye on the dam.
Yeah, good.
And we had people there on site today. We were 12 inches or more below the top of the dam.
Oh, that's not bad.
Okay, so there was,
What are we waiting for?
I think it was this one. No, that was not it.
Are you trying to show us the wording of the,
Yeah, I've looked at this many times, so. Here, this is it, right here. So, so it's just down here, signature of property owner, signature of applicant, that's all, yeah, so.
I
And
move,
this is
Mr.
Mass-
Chairman, that we authorize you to sign this application on behalf of the commission.
any second?
Second.
Second from Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Negative? Okay.
So, I'll,
I can swing by if you want.
yeah, you also need to sign the actual agreement, the IMA. But that, I want, and I've talked about this with Andy, I want the water commissioners to sign it first. They're meeting next week, so once they've signed it, you can swing by and sign both, Carl.
Got it. Okay. All right. And last is discussion and vote on the Oxbow. This is the botanical research work done at the Wright Reservation. And so what I think we have here, David, is where we have the money in the Wright Reservation Fund, Trust
Yes.
Fund.
Yep.
And so I'm looking for, I guess, a non-binding vote that the
What's the
commission.
what's the statement of work?
So the statement of work was to have the Oxbow Associates do an update to the botanical inventory
inventory.
that was done like 15 years
And
ago.
the estimate is?
We got a quote and we approved it back in the spring.
Yes, so there's two components to it.
Right.
There's the botanical survey, but then there's an optional, part of
Invasive
it, well, is to develop the management plan. So the total would be, the survey is 3,500. The optional management plan is 2,600, so the total conceivably could be 6,100.
Okay.
We've got about 50,000 plus.
Got to be a lot of interest.
To the
they
Right
must have built
Reservation
up,
Trust Fund.
yes.
This will be the first drawdown since it was created 50, 60 years ago for use at Right Reservation. I think it's a good use of money.
Yeah, yeah. I think as long as we follow through on the recommendations and we have a more active invasive management on that site, because I think the Right Reservation is a special site with a lot of the vegetation that's there, some unusual stuff.
Yeah.
But we're not doing it a favor with all the invasives that are on there.
Right.
And so we need to not just do an inventory and a plan, but we need to figure out a way to execute. And I think it's more than just some volunteers.
Well, we've got some money to use.
But that'll be more money, that'll be.
But we've got the money for it.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that's what the money was for. So what I'm looking for here is just I guess a motion of support to use this money, because the board that oversees the trust is the chair of the Conservation Commission, the treasurer for the town, and the town council. As Dave coached me on a while back, we've done some research on that. And so what has to happen is the three of us have to meet to vote to say we approve the use of this money. And so what I don't want to do is make it a binding conservation on the trustees, but just a vote in support that we agree that using this money for this purpose would be a good use of that money. I'm sorry if I'm being a little specific.
No, but I think we should state Oxbow in the vote.
Yeah.
Because the commission is saying we want to use Oxbow.
Yeah, well, and they're already working on it.
I understand,
Yeah.
but that's what the vote should say, right?
Yeah, but, yeah, so
I don't want the three-member board of the trust to go out looking for other vendors.
Right.
Which they won't.
Right. Yeah, but I had a lawyer coach me and say, don't make it binding to spend the money. Make
You gotta
it.
stop sleeping
Make
with this
make it a we support the use of the money is the word.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the commission supports the use of the money for the Oxbow work at Right Reservation for the document that our agent has put up in front of us tonight.
Probably wouldn't hurt to include the total.
Yeah.
What's that total add up to?
It'd be $6,100.
$6,100, yes.
Okay, I hear a motion from Chris. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Peter seconds it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And opposed? No? Okay.
So, was it Tom Rosinski or Rowinski?
Who?
Tom Rowinski did the first
Oh.
survey.
Oh,
That
way
wa-
back when, yeah.
That wasn't paid for from this trust fund?
No,
Yeah, I don't know why.
this is the first, as far as I know, this is
Yeah,
the first
that was like
disbursement.
2007.
Becky, it was
Scott-
$20,000 was left by the family.
Yes,
It's
the
now
Wright
fif-
family,
Now
yeah.
it's 50,000.
Scott Veneers was the one who worked that with,
Oh, did he?
yeah, with Tom.
I mean, Dave, I remember us hauling out the trust documents and looking at it from time to time over the last 25 years,
Yep.
but we never actually,
Pulled the trigger.
we never did.
Yeah, well, I think it's time. Honestly, I don't mean this to say critical or anything, but I think we've been negligent about not, that's what the money's for. And it's been there, I think it's 1969, the trust was created.
We needed
So-
David Kuntz and you.
Yeah. We can spend money. I know how to spend money. All right. Thank you very much for that. Anything else under agents report? It looks blank. Do you have anything else, David? Or are we ready to?
No, I don't have anything else.
We have minutes to approve?
Can I
Not
bring
yet.
up one thing, please?
Yeah, sure.
Cost published some very pretty pictures of Red Wing Farm and the work that the Chelmsford Garden Club has done on that site.
Yep.
Now our fence looks terrible. So we gotta replace the fence, please, guys.
Thank you for reminding me. So that, yeah, we do need to come up with an estimate, and I'll chase down some folks to try to get an estimate on what it will cost to replace that, that fence at Red Wing Farm. We did not do a Conservation Commission site walk this past Saturday, which was the first Saturday of the month. Nobody called me on it. No, you know, you guys were all having a happy summer.
It was noted.
Oh, it's noted. Okay, well, I was in Maine, so I just sort of forgot.
And I was on Cape Cod too.
Okay, all right. So the next one would be 1st of September, whatever the first Saturday is. That's Labor Day weekend. I'm thinking that we'll do one, maybe we'll do one the week after or something like that, because we've missed. And I mentioned last time that while we are trying to hit the reservations, it struck me when we looked at the, went out to River Neck and the property that we own on River Neck, that we're considering turning that into a reservation as well, that, you know, that property had buildings on it for a long time that we didn't know
Oh,
about.
you mean the little one,
Yeah.
not the big,
Yeah.
not,
No,
not,
no,
not the wildlife.
No,
The one we just, the one that abuts
Yeah,
their
yeah,
property,
right,
yes.
right. And so it strikes me that we ought to be going out and looking at some other properties that aren't necessarily reservations. Well, we can at least go do
Well,
our,
you know, you can walk down Canal Street, but can you get on the property?
yeah, I walked it with Phil about a month ago.
So you can get on the site, it's not too
It was
bad.
bushwhacking.
Yeah, I
That was
guess so.
bushwhacking. And I'm not necessarily saying that site, but there's other properties that we have in town, like Robin Hill. You know, that's our property. We don't, you know, what if there's stuff going on Robin Hill that we should be aware of? You know,
There
when you
is.
think about, yeah, I
There
know.
is stuff going on up
I-
there.
It's a kid's playground.
I don't know anything about that. Having a kid that was, well, it's 25 years ago, but anyway, so give it some thought if there's some properties that we know we own and we ought to go visit. The reservations, you know, it's nice to do the reservations, but people walk them. I think what we ought to be thinking about is sort of in the spirit of the CR with having the annual review of the against the CR, we should be having some visits of our properties that, geez, nobody's been on it in 10 years, and who knows what's going on. There's some in your backyard, Chris.
There is.
You know,
There's a lot in
behind
my
you,
backyard.
there's some property back there. We can go to Chris's house. So anyway, we'll come up with something, and maybe the week after Labor Day, that Saturday or something like that, we'll set up something.
And maybe this might be a good point, as a separate but not totally unrelated note. The commission holds a bunch of CRs, you know, probably a dozen, that have never been monitored. And I think,
You have a list of them you can give us at the next meeting?
yeah.
Why don't we start with
I've heard that rumor, and I haven't seen
Let's start with
No,
that.
list.
no,
so,
it's true.
If we're-
That,
If we're gonna hold the land trust to a
Right.
memorandum of understanding.
Did you have to say that with them sitting here? So,
Ask if you had that MOU,
I-
that report.
yeah,
all set.
yeah, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yeah, no, I'm totally, I think, you know, I've heard this rumor that there are these CRs, but I haven't seen them, and I don't know where, other than I've heard Kroll pasture.
They're there, plus the commission owns a bunch of, you might call them landlocked parcels, that I know for a fact that a number of them are being pretty severely encroached upon.
Yeah, okay.
So, that's. some
So
of-
those would be the ones to me that we would say, let's somehow, you know, maybe it doesn't need to be 8 of us or 10 of us going there, but maybe 2 or 3 showing up and, you know, asking a neighbor if we can get in there or something, because some of them, if they're landlocked, I guess we could do a drone, you know, ask the police department to get a drone over there, I don't know, we'll see that. Anyway, look for something, but we do have a meeting in the interim. On the next meeting is the 22nd,
Yeah.
and we already have a full agenda. I thank everybody for their time tonight. Oh, Chris, yeah, actually, I wanted to say, let's get Chris on the agenda, maybe as a semi-regular.
Yeah, I don't mind waiting till the end, but I did have one quick update for you guys today. The planning board is in the process of working with NEMCOG to look at MBTA zoning. And a couple of the potential areas that we're looking at are
Zoning?
MBTA zoning.
Which is?
So it's a new zoning that the Massachusetts state is looking to work with communities who are either at an MBTA station or adjacent to a town.
For more affordable housing.
Yeah, it's what they're calling the missing middle. So it's not the high-end apartment buildings, it's not the single family, it's the middle of the road multifamilies. And so they're requiring us to set specific areas, I'm not sure if it's overlays or underlying zoning, as MBTA multifamily zones. And we're looking at potential areas around town. We've started looking at potential areas and asking NEMCOG to look at the feasibility of those areas. A couple of the areas do abut, or potential areas do abut wetlands. One area that we are asking them to look at is the Riverneck Road properties that was up for development. There are a couple other areas that the potential UPS site. So a couple of them are adjacent to wetlands. So one of the things that I wanted to bring up to you is, are there specific setbacks or things that you might want to include in the future as we're designing these zones? Because we can regulate a little bit more setbacks and different types of regulations for these zones.
Does the MTA propose zoning override any existing state conservation laws?
I don't think so, but those are some of the questions that we're asking NEMCOG to clarify.
Because
Yep.
they want more density.
Yeah, those are some of the things we're asking NEMCOG to clarify, to see what we can and can't restrict in these zones. So one thing I would ask you to do is just think about some potential setbacks or zoning restrictions or special conditions that you might want to see in some of these zones that do abut wetlands.
Chris, our town restrictions are more strict than the state now.
Yes. And
Our wetlands bylaws.
Our
Yeah.
wetland bylaws are more restrictive.
correct. And part of what we're trying to do is figure out, based on these new MBTA zoning laws, how much can and can't we restrict? So those are some of the questions we're going to be asking. I believe that based on some of the answers we're getting so far, don't quote me on this because I'm still looking and asking some questions. As long as the setbacks and some of the restrictions we do put on don't impact the density and restrict the density too much, then we should be okay with some of these restrictions. But based on the overall square footage of these zones, I believe the target density is 15 units per acre density. So some zones we can have smaller density, some zones we could have larger density, but the overall gross has to be about 15 units per acre. So as long as our setbacks don't restrict that to a smaller number, then we should be okay. But those are some of the things that we'll be thinking about. This is a longer process that we're trying to get, I believe, in place for next year's town meeting. I'm not sure if we're targeting spring or fall, but there will be a public hearing process as part of this, and so we're starting to have those discussions now.
Okay.
I just wanted to make you aware of
Appreciate
that.
you bringing that up. David, could I ask that in future agendas, we just put a line for planning board update with Chris?
Okay,
Just so we, and whether, if you have nothing, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. So I appreciate having the liaison interface. I think that's really helpful. I would take a motion to close the hearing.
Close the hearing?
Close the meeting.
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, aye. Aye. Meeting is closed. Thank you, Chelmsford Telemedia. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guests and visitors.